Primark started as an Irish retailer called Pennies in 1962. They sell clothes, cosmetics and homeware. They have over 373 stores located across the world in 12 countries. Primark is known for selling cheap and fashionable clothes known as fast fashion. Primark suppliers are based across 5 continents including China, India, Turkey and Bangladesh. Primark have been under fire, accused of poor efforts in the past due to the use of child labour and unsafe working conditions. Primark's company objectives is to provide the public with good quality at a cheap and good value price, improve their supply chain sustainability, reduce their impact on the planet and ensure employees and customers are treated right and are in a safe environment. Identifying Primark's key stakeholders and shareholders. The shareholders consist of investors, employees and directors. The investors have financially invested into Primark and have a share of the company's profits. The employees work for Primark, whether it's in the stores, factories or warehouse. The directors make most of the important decision making in the company. And the stakeholders consist of customers, public, government, suppliers and pressure groups.
On the 24th of April 2013, a garment factory, Rana Plaza, used by fashion giants Primark, collapsed, causing the death of 1,134 workers and leaving a further 2,500 injured. One of the worst industrial accidents ever recorded, with poor labour conditions faced by workers daily. The 8-floored building, which was the home of 5 garment factories, crushed most employees inside. On the 23rd of June 2008, hundreds of people protested outside Primark on Oxford Street in London in relation to the organisation using suppliers that used cheap child labour. Exposed by BBC Panorama, suppliers of Primark were found guilty of employing children and paying them as little as 60p a day. Now we're going to talk about the effects this had on Primark stakeholders. Suppliers of Primark would have felt the heat when both of these incidents occurred. When the news came out that suppliers of Primark were guilty of using cheap child labour, all the suppliers had to be investigated to help improve and build back up the reputation of the business. Being a worldwide known business, customers are essential. After the aftermath of what happened at Rana Plaza, customers began to question the organisation's ethics. How could a top just cost £2? Was the issue of 2008 still happening? Do Primark still use suppliers who use cheap child labour?
When observing Carol's CSR pyramid and looking at the 4 corporate social responsibility, Primark must adhere to the economic at the base of the pyramid. It was all about making and maximise levels of profit as a company. Primark based their production in countries with very low labour costs such as Bangladesh and India. This shows that economical has lower cost of production, which leads to higher profit levels. However, using cheap labour can portray the business to be irresponsible, as they are seen by some to be exploiting less wealthy countries and their people, working in poor conditions and long hours, which in turn impacts sales as many avoid buying from Primark in protest of the use of labour, even though it is the most economical way of production for the business. The next layer of the pyramid is legal. Although businesses are expected to pursue economic profit, they are expected to do so within the framework of laws and regulations established by society. Primark were negligent for the Rana Plaza catastrophe, however have now acted lawfully by introducing structural building surveys throughout the factories and have contributed over 14 million towards helping the workers and families that were affected, and that included workers who did not directly supply to Primark.
In Bangladesh's giant garment industry, factory fires are common and deadly. The boss at Mondi Apparel's Masadul Harcation of 13 fire extinguishers, but nearly all of them were missing.
There are several hundred workers on this floor of the factory, and the manager tells us that it's more than 100,000 square feet. But so far, we've only spotted 2 fire extinguishers.
And if there were a fire, the workers would find this emergency exit door blocked by boxes. Chowdhury was adamant that his company doesn't allow child labour.
They're all 18, are they?
They're all until 18. We will not employ them.
They're all over 18.
They're all over 18.
Some of them, though, looked much younger. We couldn't speak with the workers freely inside the factory, so we went looking for them after work in this overcrowded slum. This woman and her daughter both work at Mondi Apparels. They each earn around $50 a month. They asked us to hide their faces, scared they'd lose their jobs for speaking out. The daughter told us she was just 12 years old and one of many children working at the factory.
Analysing the third layer, ethical, Primark has had some issues for quite some time, damaging the company's reputation. One of the first incidents occurred in 2005 when Primark scored 3.5 out of 20 points on the ethical index, which is based on workers' rights and oppressive practices. The company responded by joining an ethical trading initiative in 2006, however still faced problems. In 2008, a BBC investigation discovered a supplier in India was using illegal and unethical methods, which included child labour. Primark ended contract with 3 of its suppliers in India but denied knowledge of these sorts of practices, which subsequently led to protests. The final layer of the CSR pyramid, philanthropy, looks at the company's responsibilities to give back to society. The last layer represents philanthropic responsibilities. This layer includes effort intended to promote the general welfare in ways that may be appreciated but not necessarily expected. Primark shows philanthropic values by employing 50% of women workforce through the HER project. This leads women to being more independent and reduces poverty. However, it can be argued that this is not the case, as a lot of women drop out of education and employment to help their families.
Now, Holly, for years, U.S. manufacturers have been trying to improve conditions in Bangladesh. They tell customers that they don't do business with companies that don't follow the rules. How does this still happen?
Well, Scott, sometimes American companies give their orders to a supplier, not the factory. Or they'll give an order to one factory and then it gets passed along to another factory. In that case, they don't know where their products are being made. And even if they do know which factory they're using and they inspect it, there can still be problems because the factories are cleaned up ahead of the inspection and workers are coached on what to say.
Bottom line means expanding the traditional reporting framework to take into account ecological and social performance in addition to financial performance. The phrase comes from John Elkington. Primark committed to preventing and addressing modern slavery in line with the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. Their global sourcing map, which shows Primark suppliers' production sites, which represents over 90% of Primark products for sale in Primark stores. Primark conduct regular due diligence across the full scope of their business operations to identify risk of modern slavery. Primark has conducted 22,000 audits since 2007, and this information is held on their database, which allows them to interrogate the data in detail. Primark is committed to zero discharge of all hazardous chemicals from the whole life cycle and all production procedures no later than 1st of January 2020. The 2020 goal also demands the collective action of industry as well as engagement of regulators and other stakeholders. Primark does not talk about their environmental responsibility, and only their parent company has a CSR report that breaks down their ecological impact. This is a concerning fact, as from farms to shipping and storage, fast fashion industry is a huge polluter, using pesticides, chemicals, and have a massive greenhouse emission. From a profit perspective, Primark is one of the largest clothing retailers in Europe. Their revenue increased by more than 400 million and adjusted operating profit increased by 108 million. Does Primark do enough? Primark proactively provide over 7,000 hours of training per year for their suppliers to help them implement the Primark Supplier Code of Conduct. This year they have also engaged over 700 suppliers and factories in the supply chain in understanding and addressing the risk of modern slavery. Although the number of audits conducted increases every year, suppliers had the highest rate of reported injuries from last 4 years. A 2017 audit report reveals that ethical compliance did not meet from 67% of suppliers with significant and numerous issues, and only 3% has a good system in place that ensures ethical compliance. This data indicates there is still a big room for improvement to the company's responsibility and long-term sustainability.
Primark have become more sustainable and socially responsible, as 50% of the energy they use is coming from renewable fuel sources. Also, they have recovered or reused more than 85,000 tonnes of waste in the last year, and reduced the amount of waste material generated despite an increase in the number of stores opening this year. 95% of all our waste is diverted from landfill to be recycled, recovered or beneficially reused. The volume of waste in which Primark are unable to recycle has reduced by 11% this year. Primark's emissions from energy use alone have decreased by 8% this year, while a 2% decrease in the amount of energy used per square foot of selling space. This has allowed the company to become more environmentally friendly and sustainable. They have also banned the use of synthetic microbeads in all Primark branded beauty products, and Primark branded cotton buds have now paper stems instead of plastic. The launch of Primark's Sustainable Cotton campaign introduces the first range of cotton products using sustainable cotton grown by independent farmers in India and Pakistan. Primark have now partnered with UNICEF and committed $6 million over the next 3 years. 4.5 million of this fund will give vulnerable children in Cambodia access to education in a safe, clean and inclusive environment. The remaining 1.5 million will support UNICEF's emergency response and aid operations worldwide during natural and humanitarian disasters. These are all examples of Primark being responsible as a business by having concerns about the use of energy, waste and the people involved with the brand. Therefore, this creates a positive impact on the brand as it generates a positive public perception and subsequently may increase the sales of Primark garments as they are portraying themselves as a more ethical, environmentally responsible company.
In our conclusion, looking at Primark's past, unethical and even illegal activities such as the Bangladesh incident, use of child labour, and most recently the huge contribution to fast fashion clothing waste, Primark still has a lot of unethical attachments to its brand, though I do believe Primark is heading in a more ethical, sustainable approach with their compliance to ethical trading programs and organisations such as the HER programme to have 50% of workers women force, reducing 85,000 tonnes of waste and the launch of sustainable cottons.
Personally, I don't believe Primark have fulfilled their role/duty ethically. With previous history of suppliers exploiting employees, new rules and regulations should have been put in place to avoid tragedies such as this.
I don't think Primark fulfilled their corporate social responsibilities because they only scored 3.5 out of 20 on the ethical index, and even after reacting to this by joining Ethical Trading Initiative in 2006, they still face problems. For example, in 2008, BBC investigation discovered Primark using illegal and unethical methods, including child labour. Also, in Bangladesh, there was unethical labour and sexual abuse against women, plus less than minimum wages were being paid.
Overall, I believe that Primark are not acting as a socially responsible company due to the lack of care within the factories and the people that create the clothes for Primark. The reason their products are so cheap is down to their economic model, which makes cheap production and paying workers next to nothing. This is to supply the fast fashion to the UK. As customers, we do not give much thought about buying a cheap t-shirt. However, after researching into Primark, I no longer believe people should buy from there as they are not doing enough to support the less wealthy countries that produce their garments.